You're listening to Clock Radio Speakers with Armond and Doc. This week's episode is split into two sides. This is Side A.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Clock Radio Speakers. I'm your co-host, Armond Wake Up. You can follow me on all social media at Armond Wake Up. Whatever, y'all know how to spell it. If not, more important than that, please follow the official Clock Radio Speakers Twitter handle, which is at CRS Podcast, clockradiospeakers.com. All previous 400 some odd episodes are available there, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. But you can get full episodes on the Patreon, and there is no full episodes without my co-host Doc. What is going on, man?
Good, man. Good. No Vision Pro strapped to my face yet, but you know,
it's coming.
I'm good.
Somebody from Apple's gonna see this episode.
Yeah,
they're gonna subscribe to the Patreon because of the 7-day trial that we're offering, and they're gonna be like, we're gonna get them a Vision Pro.
You know what? We can make a special tier. Just for Apple.
Oh, listen. Come on, man. Yeah, man. Absolutely.
You know what? If Apple wants to give us a Vision Pro, you know what? They can get access to all my beats in the Dropbox. Totally fine. They get their own folder. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I'm with it.
Oh man, no, everything's good. We got this. I don't know if you heard about these wildfires up in Canada.
Yeah, when I went to Colorado, the air or the smoke from there was impacting. I couldn't see the mountains until it rained maybe like the third day I was there.
So there's wildfires in eastern Canada right now, and the air here is terrible. Like it's like you can't see anything. Like it's super hazy. I had the windows open most of the day because it's like 70 degrees. It's like nice weather,
Nice out.
But I was like, why is it so? I was like, is it smoky in my house? Like it's wild.
Yeah.
Terrible.
My mom was coughing pretty bad.
Yeah.
She had to wear a mask.
I know we're getting just a small taste of what people out in California have had to deal with the last couple of years, but man, I'm good.
That's crazy. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So, man.
Yeah.
We talked about a lot on the pre-show.
We did. So if you haven't heard the pre-show, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you should probably start with the pre-show. That's probably a good place to start.
For sure. I feel like a lot of our Patreon people, they do listen to the pre-show.
Yeah. If you're not a Patreon subscriber and you're wondering how do I get there, Armand mentioned this, but there's now a free trial. So if you want to investigate what's going on with the pre-show and with everything else, head over there. We talked about everything from WWDC to NBA. We talked Keem and Kendrick. We talked Gunna. We were all over the place.
Yep. Good conversation. So check that out. Join the community, and if you like it after, go listen to all the other episodes that you missed.
Just do a binge listen.
Yeah, do a binge. And then if you like it, stick around. Give us $5 a month, man. What are you gonna do? What's $5? Come on.
In this economy?
$5 is the new dollars, the new quarter. Jesus. In this economy.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Man. So we hooking y'all up. But so today, we figured to launch the trial, to sweeten the pot, wink wink, that we would have a big episode.
Yeah. And
2023, we haven't done a whole lot, if any, retrospectives. We've done a couple on like years. We did 2003. Right. We did 1993. We haven't done any artist retrospectives in a while.
In a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think this is fitting for a group who unfortunately is just now like really getting their flowers just due to the nature of the business. And we're going to talk about all this stuff, but we're going to deep dive into the discography of De La Soul today.
Yes, sir.
This was an honor to do. I had to do research. I had to ask people questions. I got friends who were around. They gave me some context for some things. And I'm really excited to talk through these. How far are we going? Are we going all the way to the Anonymous Nobody? Where are we going?
I'll be honest. I stopped at Grind 8, but we can stop whenever you want. Anonymous Nobody. We covered that on the show, I believe, when it came out.
We did.
Didn't really love it then.
It sounds a little better now.
Okay.
A little better now. But people love it. That album is critically acclaimed.
I know.
De La Soul fans really like it.
People like that Last Tribe album too.
They do, and that album is not. I would like to listen to it again. No, I don't want to listen to it again because I didn't like it. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Is there anything that we didn't mention on the pre-show that we could talk to before we get started, or do you just want to get started?
I mean, I feel like we got a lot to cover.
We do.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we didn't talk about. It's funny because we're going to talk about the music industry.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
That video of Scar Lip.
Yes. Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So for those who don't know, what am I talking about?
So Scar Lip, we actually talked about her last episode, just about her rise in popularity and all of those things. And speaking of, side note, Summer Jam was this past weekend?
Yeah. I mean, it's not special anymore.
You know what I mean? Crazy.
I know.
Crazy. And it's weird because people were saying, well, the lineup isn't good or whatever. It's like, lineup looked fine to me. I don't think the lineup was the problem. I just don't think that there are big superstar artists in hip hop.
Who are going to do something like Summer Jam?
No, just big superstar artists. Like there are artists that are like well known, and I feel like somebody like Cardi's a superstar, right? Of course.
Yeah.
But like it's
Kendrick's
not like
a superstar.
Kendrick's a superstar. Absolutely.
Drake's a superstar.
Absolutely.
They're not doing Summer Jam.
They're not doing Summer Jam.
That's what I mean.
And I'm okay. I got you. But I feel like, man, I don't know what's going on, man. I saw this clip that a DJ friend of mine posted where he talked about it was a DJ podcast, and all of the DJs were complaining about like when they do like parties with like young kids, and he's like, yo, I don't know what it is since the pandemic, but it's like I can't take the crowd on like a ride. Like when they request records, they want all highs, and they only want the parts of the record that go viral. It's like I can't DJ in 20-second increments. So I feel like I share that to say I feel like there's something going on in music. Like things are just changing. Like music is not the commodity that it once was.
It's not the center of culture.
Yeah. Did you see that report? We're going to get to Scar Lip in a second. Did you see that report that said that streaming is beginning to like max out in terms of like new users?
Yeah, which I think that's just how it happens. You know what I mean? Like at some point you're gonna max out for the number of people who are interested in paying a monthly fee for streaming services. Honestly, like it's a price increases, like real price increases are coming. And if I'm gonna be honest, I think they're overdue. What you get for how much you spend for streaming?
I have all three services.
Okay.
But I have my title is a military discount, so I only pay $5 a month for title.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. Good.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you and see you fine.
Oh, sorry. So Spotify Premium is still only $10 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So here's what I'm gonna do. All right. So how much did a CD cost in like 2000? Like when you were still buying CDs?
On the low end at the mom and pop shop, $7.99. On average,
like a brand new.
Absolutely. Yes. Sometimes mom and pop shop was selling as cheap as $7.99. Right. On the other end of the spectrum, if I went to the mall or something like that, they could be expensive anywhere from $13 to like $17.99.
I feel like Best Buy was clocking in at like 10 or 11.
10 or 11. Yep.
All right. So in the year 2000, $10 is equivalent to $17.62 right now. Okay. So you're telling me that you can pay $10 a month in 2023 money and get access to not every, but almost every song you could ever possibly want to hear. It's an insane deal. People pay more for Netflix, and Netflix doesn't have every show or movie. So I know that the streaming, I know people don't want to pay for more stuff. Like we spend so much more for streaming video. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like the labels are going to need their money at some point. And so they've gotten everybody to buy in.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me that concert prices can, and but on the other hand, maybe the strategy is we just increase concert prices because streaming is so cheap compared to concert prices, right?
Yep.
Like you could spend $10 to buy an artist CD, and then you could spend $20 to see them live in person.
I thought that Apple Music recently had a price increase.
They did. They had a small increase, but I'm saying like, I feel like it's really cheap for what you get. And it's
for sure.
If you think about it.
Yeah, for sure. When you think literally access to most of the music to ever be released. And then on top of that, how many songs get released a day?
Yeah,
like
more music released than ever before.
Absolutely.
Oh, and by the way, you get to listen to it wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
Ever.
And then you got people who are like people who are sharing accounts.
Oh yeah.
So so like my son has my Spotify. So so technically I'm splitting that. So I'm not even paying for, they have the family plans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like,
the family plan is $15.99.
and I would pay that in a heartbeat.
Right. Which
I'm not.
if you work backwards into like when our parents had us as teenagers, that's less than the cost of a single CD. And it's like, wait, and my whole family gets all the music they could ever want forever per month. Yeah. Like we have devalued audio. We have devalued music.
Yes, we have.
And so, the labels are, on the one hand, they're chasing, right? They're just trying to stay relevant. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, they're like, okay, well, how can we get money? People spend more money than ever before on concerts, And so but that only works at the high end for the Taylor Swifts of the world,
right?
Beyonce, Drake to a certain extent, like it's just the pricing is crazy. And so, but what about like the middle class musician? What about the De La Souls of the world? It's hard, man. It's hard out there.
Hard, yeah. So
the Scar Lips of the world, maybe.
Right. So you've got Scar. Great transition. So you've got Scar Lip. She's on DJ Vlad.
Yeah.
And she's talking about what she's willing to accept as far as from a record label, how much money.
Yeah.
So she's like, you're only giving me $100,000. That's not enough. I want $500,000. I want $1 million, whatever.
Yeah.
And then Vlad is like, well, basically explains to her that, the loan or the money that you get from a record label is a loan,
right?
With a high interest rate, and you need to make that money back. And all that money is not yours. That money is a part of a budget, and it's to get you hot. And it's to help you make that money back, but you technically don't. You could, if you trick off that money, like that's it for you,
right?
And the look on her face,
I know, man. I saw it.
It bothered me.
Yeah,
like the dad in me was like, "Who's protecting that little girl?"
Nobody.
And especially when you hear her story, lots of family trauma, stuff like that. And in a lot of these cases, man, like these are the people that the music industry targets because you can just promise them fame and fortune. And, shout out to Sway, but I had some people ask like, yo, who's her manager? And I'm like, well, shoot, her manager might be in on the swindle. We don't know who her manager is. If she's just now hearing that information from DJ Vlad, everybody failed. Everybody failed on her team. Nobody put her on. But that's the other thing, Doc, is hearing about these artists and I was telling my son, it's funny, we just had this conversation today. Yeah. I was telling my son about the barrier of entry that I experienced in like doing music. So like I had to save up money and get studio equipment. I had to buy a microphone. And then I had to get a preamp, and then I had to learn how to pirate and like download software or go to Media Player, Best Buy and get cheap software. Had to learn how to use it, get better, build on that, all that stuff. And then I had to get good. You know what I'm saying? Like the barrier, and I'll just have the conversation now. I was going to say it later on with De La brought it up, but like the barrier of entry in terms of like if things are good or not, to me, it low key doesn't exist because of accessibility and technology. It's pretty simple to make music that is well enough.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because when I was coming up, if somebody couldn't rap or if somebody couldn't make beats, you knew.
Also, that was a thing that people really like, that especially artists themselves really cared about. Like, man, you listen to this De La, we'll talk about De La, right? We're this is the longest tease for De La we've ever done.
For sure.
They care quite a bit
That's
about
right.
what's going on in hip hop, the state of the music industry, and all that.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's like, what do you expect? You know, we had a whole generation of rappers who we listened to, who all they rapped about, for the most part, was about how it's a business. They're not really a rapper.
No, you're right. The whole 2000,
Everybody
saying
was too cool to be a rapper.
Everybody's too cool to be a rapper, even now.
Well, that's what I mean. But these are the kids of those, you know,
Absolutely.
stylistically. That's the way it goes.
Absolutely. So, whereas when De La Soul was coming up, 1988, rap was still very much a sacred art form. And by sacred, I mean, it really was like a voice of expression and a medium of communicating and finding culture and purpose for many people. It wasn't means to an end like it seems to be now for many people. And at the time I was trying to remember 88, because a lot of people mention 1988 as one of the golden era for hip hop. So a lot of the narrative that I saw online was like De La was anti-gangster rap, but like there wasn't really a whole lot of gangster rap in 88. Like it existed, but it wasn't, you know, it was straight out of Compton, Ice-T, Eazy-E, all that stuff. Like, but it didn't really, it was a thing. Well, okay.
Remember, hip hop was much smaller then.
Yes.
Straight Outta Compton was a very big deal.
See, and it's funny. See, so that's how I talk myself through that. When did Straight Outta Compton come out? That's what?
88.
Okay. Well, then that's
August 88.
There it is. So 89. So there you go. Okay. In my mind, I'm immediately thinking Death Row, and my mind completely blacked out from NWA. So there's that. So it changed. Straight Outta Compton changed a lot, and we did didn't we do a NWA retro, or
I don't know. We did a Dre
retro?
retro, so we kind of covered it. We kind of covered it there.
All right. So, De La represented a lot of the kids who just did not want to conform to that, because a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's what we have to do now. We have to be gangster. We got to be tough," and then they embodied that. And De La were the antithesis of that completely. They were more. It was more like, you know, Kanye, Lupe. These artists don't exist without De La.
Oh, there's a long list of artists that don't exist without De La, and there are even specific De La projects where I listen to them and I'm like, oh, like we'll talk about it later. I listened to Stakes Is High and I was like, boy, do I hear Little Brother as a direct descendant of Stakes Is High.
And they'll tell you that.
I'm sure I didn't even look. I didn't even have to. I could just hear it, and I feel the vibes. I feel, you know, what's going on. And no, I mean, there's no Outkast without De La Soul. You know, like there's, yeah, they're a fascinating group for a lot of reasons, right? Mm-hmm. And what they do in 89, you know, 88 and 89 with 3 Feet High and Rising is, you know, it's both the greatest thing that happened to them, and I think it probably becomes like the worst thing that happened to them at the same time.
Yep. I mean, even like down to the album cover.
Mm-hmm.
So my father owned the tape because my cousin, my young cousin who lived with us at the time, he was in high school, and he played 3 Feet High all the time.
Yeah.
My dad heard it. My dad liked it because he was a big Parliament Funkadelic fan.
Oh yeah.
So he buys the tape. And I remember as a kid just like folding out the tape, reading the credits, and just how colorful everything was. It looked like something that I would have drawn at that age.
Yeah.
Which is the complete antithesis of a Straight Outta Compton album.
Right.
Which, you know, is very harsh and aggressive, and, you know, so even that throws people off. But then you press play on the album. I don't know how quickly you want to get into this music, but
I mean, I think pressing, like, I think honestly, even the, you know, so yes, there are skits, lots of skits. It's a De La Soul album, for crying out loud. But like, even just listening to like some, it's obviously that late 80s style of rapping, but like the energy and the vibes, I just don't think hip hop had really had anything that sounded like this exactly.
And I think the sound is largely attributed to Prince Paul.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and you know, it's interesting when you look at it, like, it's produced by Prince Paul, but De La helped out quite a bit.
Absolutely.
With the production as well. And, you know, he heard their demo records, like the first original version of Plug Tune In. And he was brought in to be, you know, he was the DJ for Stetsasonic, right? And, you know, he becomes more than just a producer. He effectively becomes the fourth member of the group. And it's like this collage style of sampling, right? Where like I listen to this now and it's like, you think about, this is what, 34 years ago, right? When this album comes out, it must have felt like anything was possible in hip hop stylistically. Like you could just try stuff, you know, they were just like, yeah, let's put this on top of this and well, sure, let's try it. Why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah. He goes on record. I read a little bit of a Prince Paul interview where he just talked about finding production in anything.
Yeah.
And when you go to that era, the default go-to was James Brown.
Sure.
Right. So yeah, we're gonna take this funky drummer loop and these James Brown horns over here and this, and we're gonna turn it into a song. Whereas like Prince Paul and De La, they're pulling from folk music, country music, rock, 80s pop. Like they're pulling from samples from everywhere, and making hip hop out of it.
Sure, because hip hop, right? I mean, they're obviously, was saying, you know, it goes without saying, they're stretching the boundaries of like, what does hip hop sound like? You know,
what can we do? And even just the lyricism, they're not rapping at this stage of their career.
No,
to me, that comes a little bit later.
Yeah, they make a real effort at it later.
This is more like storytelling.
Yeah.
And what the music sounds like and feels like to me, which I really appreciated, was like what I was doing when I first got equipment. Like I was just trying stuff.
Yeah.
I was just having fun with it. Like, you can do that.
So much fun in this album, man.
Yes. So, you know, we can talk about like the theme and all that other stuff, but like, yeah, these guys are just having fun. It's not necessarily in a record like Me, Myself, and I, even though that is I think people define that record as fun because of the beat and the video. Right. But when you listen to this whole album, it literally just sounds like when a bunch of kids come over and stay the night at their friend's house, like on a Friday, and they're just up all night just doing stuff. That's what this sounds like and feels like.
There's one skit on here in particular. Can You Keep a Secret? Let me play. Actually, I'll play part of this real quick just to refresh your memory. This is so goofy, but like in a great way. Prince Paul likes money. It's exactly the kind of thing where you're like, exactly what you said. Oh, it's like, You've been up. It's like 1 a.m. You're messing around.
Everything's funny.
Everything's funny.
Yep.
Yeah. The thing, like, De La, hugely influential in a lot of ways. Skits is one of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't think I really clocked it until now, but I'm pretty sure that the Mad Rapper skit is actually dissing De La Soul. And I never clocked it until I listened to this. It was right after their 4th album. And the whole style of that skit, you could not be more directly inspired by the way that De La Soul did skits.
We're going to get into some disses a little later.
Oh, yeah.
Things that I did not know. But some things that I was interested in hearing, but with some disses. But overall,
yeah,
I think the only misstep on this album,
okay,
because this is a long album, but we also have to recognize this is 1988.
It's long, yeah, for sure. It's 23 songs.
23 songs, lots of skits in that.
Lots
whatever.
of skits.
You gotta. Some of the skits are after the song. Some of the skits stand on their own.
Sometimes they do skits backed by a skit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Kanye on some College Dropout stuff.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't like is that the original version of Buddy is on here and the remix is not.
Yeah.
I wish they would have had that, but I mean, just their style of dress, shopping at the thrift store, their haircuts. I just remember all of those things being like a lot of kids took that on. And like embraced that. And I think that was a testament to why they were so popular, and why they connected with the youths so much. Simply because they were clearly being themselves in a culture that was starting to like posture and position a little bit. And maybe even when you look at your LL Cool J's and your Run DMCs, like, the record labels are presenting a lot of these rappers as like larger than life.
Yeah.
Where like these just felt like your friends at school that rapped.
Yeah, for sure.
So
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, really, 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 really dope album. This is one of the albums that I wish I would have like understood it more when I was, or I wish I would have been around during that time to understand it a little more.
Man, imagine being like 13 and this album comes out.
Yes.
It's blowing your mind.
Yep.
Like you hear it now and like some records are just so original and different that you're like, yeah, this still works. Some of them, many of them, like if we're being 100% honest, you listen to them now and you're like, okay, that sounds like, it's like an old, it sounds like an older record. Mm-hmm. But the creativity is there. The energy is there. The joy is there.
Yes.
And it's funny because the marketing, right? The daisies and the sort of are they hippies and all that, like that's heavily pushed by Tommy Boy, who, they were like trying to figure out how do we market this group? What do we got? And,
yeah, go ahead.
And De La, I think, well, we'll talk about this because this plays a lot into De La Soul's Dead, but like, I think that they were young and they were like, all right, we're just, they're trying to make it work. Like they're really young. When this album comes out, they are 20, 19, and 18. Right. So they're making this album when some of them are still in high school. Mm-hmm. Right. They're releasing their first singles when some of them are still in high school. Right. Yeah. Like it must have been incredible to you get signed and now, you're making this album. Yep. You're like, okay, what? Sure. You want me to be in the video and I'm looking like this and it's this and that. This is the cover. Sure. You know what I mean?
Yep. Because Plug Tuning comes out first. Potholes in My Lawn is the second single. Me, Myself, and I is the 5th single.
It's the 5th single, but it's right after the album comes out. So it's kind of like hey, this is the real single now. You know what I mean? It's not the teaser single.
For sure. Because to me, this song sticks out like a sore thumb on this
Me,
album.
Myself, and I?
Yes.
I mean, there's a trend on, you listen to these De La albums and it's, the real 90s stereotype of, oh, we needed a single.
Mm-hmm. But, and it's weird because they don't seem like a group that needs a single.
That's interesting. I think I don't know.
So when I say need a single, I don't mean like something to introduce you. I'm always thinking like when somebody says we need a single, I'm thinking we need a hit. We need a crossover, something that could be played casually, whatever. And I mean, Me, Myself, and I knocks it out the park is one of the most well-known hip hop singles like ever. But and they made it authentically them. But when you hear it in the context of the album,
it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, like I don't want to say it doesn't fit. It's just very different than everything else that's on here.
For sure, 100%. I agree. I agree with that. I think I think on their future albums, you know, we'll talk about De La Soul's Dead in just a bit. I'm assuming like very clearly they're like, hey, you can do what you want, but we need a single.
Yep. Me, Myself, and I, give us that again.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right. And you know. Tommy Boy's going to catch a lot of flack on this podcast, I'm guessing, maybe, or at least they certainly did from De La Soul. But like, that is their job, is to sell records, you know. And Me, Myself, and I it was nominated for a Grammy. Mm-hmm. That album went platinum in an era when going platinum for a hip hop group was not a thing. That didn't happen all the time. EPMD used to brag that all their albums went gold. That was a thing. Oh, their first 3 or 4 albums went gold. Wow.
That's right.
By the late 90s, going gold was like, oh, we only went gold. Right. Yeah. But at the time, they went platinum. Mm-hmm. One of the things I read when doing research for this week, De La Soul was like was one of the, if not the first hip hop group to really blow up in Europe. Like they did incredibly well overseas.
That makes sense.
They just went, they were huge.
Wow.
They were huge.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So then that transcends to their second album that gets released in 1991, De La Soul is Dead.
Yeah.
Out the gate, a complete contrast from 3 Feet High and Rising. Very colorful album cover. Yeah. Now there are 3 daisies dead in a pot.
They couldn't make it more clear.
And by the 4th, where am I at? Oh, let me pull up the track list. I believe by the time you get to Peace Porridge in the first skit, it's clear that they've had some experiences that they weren't too fond of, where they were, you know, again, this is gangster rap, hip hop. So there are people who, you know, took them as soft or punks or what have you. And clearly they were doing a lot of fighting while on tour. People not taking into the fact that these are still 3 kids from New York.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they began to resent that sort of Daisy having fun. Where now this album is like they're jaded, bitter in some regards, very like sarcastic and pessimistic. Yeah. And of course, when I hear this album, I'm like, yo, this album is crazy.
I think for younger listeners of this show, the legend of this album is maybe lost a little bit to time. So I want to rewind back. Right?
Please.
So I was too young for this album when it came out. I was born in 1983. I was 8 years old when De La Soul's Dead came out. I was not listening to De La Soul's Dead as an 8-year-old. Okay.
For sure.
I was listening to like Hammer. You know what I mean?
I was around a little bit.
But when I was really getting deep into hip hop in like 95, really, especially like 95 and 96, this album was always mentioned because it got 5 mics in the source.
That's right.
Which meant so much to people in the mid 90s. You can't even imagine if you want. It was like, never mind Pitchfork, Rolling Stone. No. The source was different. The source was everything.
Everything.
5 mics in the source. God himself might as well come down and put on a tablet. Yep. You know, it meant everything.
Absolutely.
And so that album was unquestionably always like one of the classics. Oh yeah, it's one of the best ever. The source said it was. And so, you know, I think that's kind of been forgotten. Like it still gets mentioned. I feel like people will still put it on lists, but like hip hop's just been around for so long now that like the list of classics, you know, it's impossible to try to narrow it down. But there was a time, a very influential time for people in our age group where like, if you did know about this, we're going to tell you about this album.
That's right.
Yep. And when I listen to this album, it's kind of sad to me.
Yes.
Honestly. They're so young when 3 Feet High and Rising comes out, and it makes them icons in a sense.
Yep.
To this whole generation of fans, crosses them over to a lot of white fans.
Mm-hmm.
And, but like you said, others thought they were soft, right? So they're just like, we're going to switch it up. But like, okay, so if they're 20, 19, and 18 when that first album comes out, they're 2 years older now, and they've made this kind of shift. They're already this jaded. That's wild.
Yeah. It goes to say, like, well, I wonder what kind of experiences they had that made them, turn that way so quickly.
I mean, very, very. I don't think they were super happy with their image, how they were presented by their label. There's an incident when they, on the Arsenio Hall show, he calls them hippies, I think, because
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Because that's what the label was. I mean, you look back at it now and you're like, well, yeah. That was kind of that was their brand, to use some 2023 speak, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't see it that way because they were raised in an era of authenticity, and they're, young kids from New York trying to like make sure that they're represented the way they want to be represented.
Absolutely.
Back to that source review real quick.
Yeah.
What's interesting about it is that's by far the most famous review of this album. A lot of the reviews for this album were mixed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Which I didn't know. I always assumed it was just universally critically acclaimed because, like I said, when I was a younger hip hop fan, if the source said it, I just assumed that was it,
Right. We weren't reading Rolling Stone.
It got mixed reviews. It did not sell as well. First album goes platinum. This album goes gold.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, it had the 2 records. So a roller skating jam named Saturdays is, first of all, fire, and then second of all, is more of like a niche record.
I'm gonna play it real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a great hook. If you've never heard this song, you should go listen to this song.
Immediately, because Q-Tip is involved, I'm like, oh yeah, he did the drums. Those drums are great. That loop is fantastic.
I don't think does he get a production credit on this?
If he doesn't get it, listen, this is all native tongue, so I'm sure they're just like sharing ideas.
There was some competition there too.
Oh yeah, I read the Stakes is High story.
Yeah, okay, you read the same thing I did.
Yep, we'll get there. Yep.
No, roller skating jam named Saturdays. So I think if my notes are correct, like that was supposed to be for a native tongue side project,
which is crazy to me that never came out.
But Tommy Boy was like, we need a single.
Yeah.
Okay, because this De La Soul is Dead album is depressing.
Listen, my favorite song on this album is Millie Pulled a Pistol on Santa.
This song is, first of all, the topic of that song is wild. The production on that song for 1991. Yeah.
That record is crazy.
They released that as a single.
Third single. So that kind of lets you know like where they are.
Yeah.
They're trying to get away from Me, Myself, and I as much as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, even look at Ring, 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 right?
I like Ring, Ring, Ring.
I hated Ring, Ring, Ring at the time.
Really?
As a kid, it was one of those songs, I've shared this on the show, when a video would play on Yo MTV Raps and it felt like it was 15 minutes long. Ring, Ring, Ring was one of those songs. Like, why is this video still on?
Yeah.
Now that I've gotten older, I appreciate the song so much more now.
Mm.
But I didn't know what the song was about until I did research for the show. Like, oh, this song is about other artists trying to, get them to, put them on, get a record deal. Like people trying to give them their demo. But it's very pessimistic. Like, I'm sure if you have all that, negativity coming at you, people calling you punks, pushing back on you, whatever, it's like, why would you want us to help you out?
Yeah.
So even that song, it's got a little swing to it, a little vibe to it, but the topic is very pessimistic and snarky.
Yeah, I think what's also interesting, like to go back and listen to this, and if you look at how old they are, this makes a lot of sense, but to me, it doesn't really fit with what I always think of as the Native Tongues image, because a surprising amount of this album is about either having sex with girls or trying to have sex with girls, which...
Listen, do you know what Buddy's about?
I'm saying. But like when you think about the image of Native Tongues, that's not really how it's kind of presented or thought about now, I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, at the time it wasn't, because I think sex in hip hop, or just sex in America, is always presented so like, just like, it's very like porn-esque and very like hypersexual, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe it comes down to like who it's coming from. Because I mean, even look at the last album, the orgy skit, right?
Right.
But also like they're in their late teens, early 20s. Of course, they're trying to have a lot of sex, right? Like,
yeah, it's just like it is like, for when you think of De La's image,
absolutely.
And then you listen to this album and you actually listen to the lyrics, you're like, oh, that's really that's just all they're talking about.
That's all they're talking about. Yep. Yeah, Biddies in the BK Lounge. Yeah, absolutely. So
I think
go ahead.
I think production-wise, like you can hear this is getting more sophisticated. The techniques are getting, on a technical level, it is more impressive.
That's right.
I can appreciate what they're doing on this album. And I think if you are in the pocket for De La Soul, like in terms of the age group for like when they came out, and you were like, you're getting older as they're getting older. This is like right where you were at, right? This album is weird. It's got depth to it. It's layered, but it's got like these weird skits that feel like inside jokes, but it's not the happy-go-lucky of 2 years ago. It's different now.
Like literally every skit is anytime somebody says they like De La, they get beat up.
Right. And so like, I'm sure like if you were a teenager or a college kid in 91 and you had you really liked their last album and you're getting a little older, maybe you see things, maybe you think you're more mature than you were 2 years ago, or whatever the case is, you're progressing right like De La Soul is.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Listening back now is just jarring, where it's like, with the exception of Saturdays, for the most part, it appears as though there's no joy at all in De La Soul's world. And joy is what defined their last album, really. Joy and like the freedom of like self-expression. We can do anything.
That's right.
Yeah. They got a lot more tricks now. They can do a lot more. But like you said, right, to go back to your point, they've seen a lot more.
And if you don't have anybody there to kind of like help you process what you've seen, it's very easy to kind of internalize that jadedness or that because really jadedness, a lot of it is just disappointment. Like, man, I thought this was this, but really it's that. And I'm sad. And I'm angry because I'm sad. So, but, I'm in learning all this about this album, I'm like, dang, why do I like this album so much? Because I thought this album was fire. I'm like, oh boy.
You have a nuanced and cynical eye on the world.
For sure. And I think that eye has been more refined over the years. But I think back to how cynical I was at that age. I started being cynical when I was maybe like 14, 15, like sophomore year of high school, I want to say. It's the first time I dealt with like real consistent disappointment, and you begin to see your parents as people and not just these like mythical like superheroes.
Oh man. You got you oh man, honestly, I was just about to say, wow, you got to 14 before that, man. I didn't do that. No, really, I think I was 6, 7 when I had my first. Oh,
wow, 6
or I guess. Let me see. Actually, let me do the math. Maybe actually, let's say definitely 8 for sure. 8.
Dang, you're still a baby though. Wow,
man, I can't. I'll tell the story real quick. I woke, kids always like going to wake up early in the morning, right? I need some water. I need something from the kitchen, right?
I need some water. Always need some water.
I go out there, and so I'm living in California.
Mm-hmm.
Go out there, it's like 6 a.m. or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
My dad is on his knees on a phone call with his mother, asking her to pray with him for forgiveness. And he's talking about what he needs forgiveness for.
Oh,
right?
And you heard it.
Now, because it's 9 a.m. out in the East Coast. Mom's up, So he decided he was having a crisis of consciousness and faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like 91, my parents like split up for, I thought they were going to break up for good. My mom my mom took me and my brother out here to Connecticut for a summer. We lived out here. My parents ended up getting back together, but it was because my parents were both unfaithful with each other, and they were going through a lot of drama and everything else. But like to wake up as an 8-year-old and see your father my father was not a religious man, but on his knee, but his mother's very religious.
Yeah.
On his knees in the kitchen, asking his mother to pray with him, and he's trying to find God or something in that moment.
Yeah.
Well, that is a jarring moment for what is an 8-year-old to see. So it's all that to say, absolutely. Man, you made it to 14. Oh man.
And I'm thinking 14 is too young, man. 8 is, oof.
Oh man.
I'm sorry.
No, man. Then when we came back, like my dad was like, blaming my mom for them like getting split up to me, telling me this. And I was like, why are you telling me this? What's going on?
Right.
Wild stuff, man. Yeah. So, when you lose, that's a whole other separate conversation. Like when you quote unquote lose innocence really matters, Yeah. Anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack us.
Sorry. No, that's great context, man. Cause I'm having these conversations with my son now. He's 14. So I'm like trying to shield him from the bitter. Trying to shield him from the jaded, right? So I'm trying.
I'm sure. I mean, I'm. There are others that are worse than I do, for sure, right?
For sure.
It's amazing I'm not a parent, but it's amazing how parents are always trying to like protect their kids in a way, which makes sense. But like so much of politics and controversy, at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to there are some amount of parents who will spend anything and do everything to make sure that their child never has to have a bad time ever. And I'm not even, and that's not realistic. My goal is to I wasn't trying to knock you at all.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I feel like the best thing you can do as a parent is to minimize it as best you can. Don't shield them to the point to where when they do bump their head, when they do have those situations, that you've created enough safety for them to come to you and be like, hey dad, I messed up.
Yeah.
How do I help me fix this?
Yeah.
That's a successful parent.
Oh yeah.
But there's no way that I could because that, like, dog, when I joined the Air Force and I got sent to Japan, there were no men on my floor who knew how to do laundry. So little stuff like you can't even take care of yourself. You don't even know how to like separate clothes. Huh?
Man, when I went to college, I didn't know how to do laundry.
Oh.
Somehow I know I didn't know how to do it.
Oh man, I was doing laundry. I was ironing my own clothes at like 9, 10. In my era, we used to do we put creases in our jeans.
It was weird. I was cleaning. I had to clean the bathroom, and I was doing yard work. I was doing other stuff, but for whatever reason, I just remember getting to college, and I was like, I can figure this out. How hard could this be?
Back in those days, you couldn't you just watch stuff on TikTok or YouTube now, like how to do laundry, and somebody's done a whole 8-minute video on.
I'm pretty sure I had to ask somebody, which was really embarrassing.
If you ask another guy, he'll protect you. It'll protect you. If you ask a girl, it just better be like one of your homegirls. If it's a girl that you like, it's over. It's over.
That's how I used to think too.
I know. What are you gonna do?
It's that kind of intimacy, man. It's hard.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
That's real intimacy.
Oh,
Asking somebody about something that you're embarrassed about. Yeah.
Listen, I always say we really like we talked about this last episode how we're just like the greatest generation because all things we got to experience. But like we were deprived of so many things.
It's like, listen, yeah, I know the greatest generation landed on the beaches of Normandy, but we had 90s hip hop.
Absolutely. Right? What? We had Rap City, Yo MTV Raps. We had The Simpsons. What?
We had the NBA on NBC.
Yeah, what? But we didn't have, safe spaces to process, our trauma or disappointments or experiences. And, therapy was like just not even a bad word. Therapy was like non-existent. Like what? Go talk to a professional about, huh? Not doing that.
Oh man, hip hop was my therapy.
Absolutely. Hip hop was
I listened to loud, angry music.
I was telling my son that, that's why I was so angry as a teenager because I had all these unprocessed emotions. And like one of the ways that I processed it was through listening to music, seeing images on TV that resonated me, music videos, and then in turn writing my own versions of my experience through. All right, De La Soul.
Yeah, De La Soul, man. So you really like De La Soul?
I love De La Soul is Dead. This album is great. This album is really, again, a little long.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're getting into like Matt MP The Last Dawn territory with these number of tracks.
Hey man, listen. One day we'll do
that video was great.
That video was the Crises actors. That video was amazing.
It was a promo video. Did you? If you shared that, was it Twitter or
it was
Instagram?
It was Twitter. I can I'll retweet it on the Clock Radio Speakers Twitter if y'all don't have that. But yeah. So it's a commercial, and I miss these so much, like commercials for hip hop albums. There's a commercial for MP The Last Dawn when Master P threatened to retire, and he had just go to. By the time you listen, I'm actually gonna retweet it right now just go to our Clock Radio Speakers Twitter handle @CRS Podcast and just watch the video. Shout out to Fake Shore Drive, a really dope Twitter account. Hilarious.
As a backpack wearing, arms crossed, East Coast rap fan at the time, I was like, oh, you're gonna retire? Excellent. This is great.
And then that ends up being his best album. MP The Last Dawn is fire.
Oh God.
P had the best. It's funny. I'm gonna make this statement. You're gonna laugh. Okay. P had the best production on No Limit, like by far. But you're gonna be like, what? Don't do that.
He was paying him. You know what I'm saying?
No, he wasn't.
Well,
that's why they own the masters now, because he wasn't paying them. All right, De La.
I'm trying to think. What do I even know any songs off this album?
Make him say part 2. Nah, what? I don't think so.
You know what I always love about when I look at the credits for a No Limit record? This man was like, yeah, we can sample Smooth Criminal. No problem.
Oh man. P would not only like sample the record, he would like redo the hook. Like he'd just take the whole song and just rap over it. I'm like, are you clearing these? Oh yeah. I don't think you know on these records. Like Hot Boys and Girls is a big record from there. War Wounds is a big record from there. Thug Girl, Thinking About You was a single. But I don't think any of these none of these records transcended the way that Make 'Em Say or. Well,
I even like from that earlier in 98, I feel like I Got the Hookup was like his bigger single from that year.
Yeah, maybe. Is that soundtrack on? I don't know if I threw that on the $10 tier, but I need to do that. I've got the entire No Limit discography because a lot of those albums are not on streaming.
I do feel like the No Limit soundtracks might be better than the regular studio albums.
I got the hookup has a Jay-Z record on there with the What the Game Made Me? Yeah, What the Game Made Me. Remember that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, man. If I Could Change, that's a great record.
It's a fire record. I'm telling you, P had a good ear for himself, and then like everybody else would get scraps.
For sure.
Shout out to Master P on a De La Soul retrospective.
I say it every time. I'll say it again. The sample video, the video breaking down the sample chop from Make 'Em Say is one of the more ridiculous sample chops I've ever seen in my entire life.
Crazy.
It's incredible.
Crazy.
If you don't know, so if you're listening to this and you've probably heard Make 'Em Say before in your life, that record samples Apache. Okay.
I can't, it's one of those things that's like right in your face. It's like it's so obvious that's the sample, but it never clicked until I think that was DJ Artistic.
Yeah, right there. It's
crazy.
Nuts. All right. De La Soul.
Yeah. De La Soul.
Yeah.
All right.
So what I was gonna say is De La Soul is dead. I'm mixed on it. I understand the mixed reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, because it's so weird to think about, like, in hip hop, how you react to your debut is become kind of a trope, but it really is interesting how people do that, right? Like how Nas reacted to Illmatic is a very famous one. How you follow up that first one.
That's right.
And De La was just like, they weren't even, it's like they had the inverse of Nas in a sense, right? Where they were like, they had the success, they didn't want it.
That's
not
right.
like that.
Absolutely.
You know, they didn't want that image.
Yep.
They didn't want the label telling them what to do.
Yep.
They didn't want this. They were like, no, we're going to do our own thing. And, you know, I mean, critically, it paid off in a way. Culturally speaking, this album still has a huge impact. A lot of fans. It's a heck of a move to make as a 20-year-old.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm with you. That's a great point. Where Nas goes completely commercial, like I want more success. De La is like absolutely not. Which then leads into the third album, 1993, Balloon Mind State.
Yeah.
To hear the rest of this week's show, exclusive episodes, and more, subscribe today at patreon.com/CRS podcast or clockradiospeakers.com.